Hi, I'm Tim Fegley with Tennessee Job Training and Safety. We're in a little bit of a unique situation right now here with the COVID and everything where we can't come to you in person. So we are putting together these videos with our programs on them, and I hope that they'll be effective for you. These programs are just going to be like everything else that you guys sit through in our safety meetings. It's going to be as good as you want it to be. I hope you can get something out of this video that will help you understand what your responsibilities and obligations are, both as management, supervisors, and line crew. I'm going to talk to you today about equipment and tool maintenance programs. It is something that I think is very important. I think that we have to do our due diligence in inspecting and maintaining our tools so that we can remain safe on the job. Before we get started, as most of you know of the people that I call on, I like to talk about near misses, close calls, and accidents that have happened in the last month or since the last time we were together. I would encourage you to talk about anything that your company knows about. My boss, Mike Simmons, is going to send you all a list of some of the things that have happened throughout the state. I'm going to pause for about 30 seconds or so here, and I encourage you to discuss any near misses or close calls that you had at your own utility, as well as some of the things that Mike has sent you in writing. Okay, talking about maintenance programs. An effective maintenance program is essential to do your job safely. You have certain obligations and responsibilities when it comes to the maintenance and inspections of your tools. A good maintenance program promotes reliability and does help prevent failures that could lead to injuries or accidents because the tools weren't properly maintained. It's got to include regular and thorough inspections as well as documentation. Documentation of any inspections is critical for several reasons. First of all, if you have a documentation that you've been inspecting your tools on a regular basis and inspecting your equipment on a regular basis, it shows that you are doing the best that you can to keep your equipment and tools in good working order. The documentation also makes it very, very easy for management or supervisors to go through and fix anything that you guys have found wrong. So documentation is critical. A lot of the times I hear guys talk about, well, why should I turn this in, a piece of equipment or truck or tire or something like that's not in good shape? Why should I turn it in? Management doesn't do anything about it. If you document it, it's going to get taken care of. It's the responsibility of management and supervisors to take care of things like that. And it doesn't fall through the cracks if you have a good documentation of it. So I encourage y'all to document your inspections, whether you find anything that could fault or whether you don't. Documentate both the good and the bad of your inspections. Again, maintenance programs includes documentation of what you found. It also addresses the problems immediately and documents what's been corrected. If you've had a tool or a piece of equipment that has a defective part on it and you've documented, it's up to supervisors to document what's been taken care of to control or replace the bad part of it. It's a good idea to have a written policy and a written plan in place, both for inspections and for correcting, the defective equipment. If you've got a written plan in place, everybody's on the same page, and it does get taken care of more effectively. This is right out of the APPA manual. Most of you in this business follow the APPA safety manual, and it states all tools and equipment, regardless of ownership, shall be of approved type and maintained in good condition. Tools are subject to inspection at any time Supervisors have the authority and the responsibility to condemn unserviceable tools regardless of ownership. Guys, what that means is if you signed the book of that APPA safety manual, that you received it, you are signing that you read it and you understand it. You need to know that this is required of you to inspect and keep all of your tools and equipment in good working condition. Vehicle maintenance is part of your equipment and tools. You are required by DOT and OSHA rules for regular inspections and maintenance of vehicles, depending on what type of utility you've got, whether you're a co-op or a municipal. You have different regulations for both, but commercial vehicles, meaning larger trucks, bucket trucks, digger trucks, things like that, are required to have DOT inspections daily. It's up to whoever is responsible for that particular vehicle to do those. Guys, don't pencil whip these. Take the time to inspect these vehicles correctly. You've got a sheet of some type that you follow, and you check off different parts of that piece of equipment that you've inspected. Don't sit in the driver's seat and check them off as you go. Go through and actually inspect those parts and pieces of equipment correctly. A lot of times we get in a hurry, or we know that it was working properly yesterday or the last time we used it, and we just sit in the driver's seat and check the boxes. Please don't do that. Take the time to do it correctly. It's your responsibility. And if we want things corrected properly and we want things to work properly, we need to do a good inspection and a thorough inspection. Pole trailers, flatbeds, wire reel trailers, any type of trailer, particularly if you're a co-op, has to be inspected by a mechanic annually and has to be tagged appropriately annually. If you're a municipal, you may and may not fall under that category, but it's still important to inspect them before each use and keep them in good working condition for the use that day and for the use for the next person to use that trailer. Most of you have something like this right here for your daily trip inspections. I encourage you again to don't check the box until you look at the part. It's going to give you different things that you're required to check. Check it before you check the box. Make sure you look at it. Make sure you know it's in good working condition before you check that sheet. That pre-trip inspection, or some people do post-trip inspections, is critical. That is the part of your inspection form that you're required to fill out, and it is important to actually look at each part individually before you check it off. Things like this right here in this picture, we think, well, that'd be very noticeable. We're going to notice when that happens. That's not always true. That can happen driving back to the shop at the end of the day. Things like that can break and things like that can happen. If we just sit in the driver's seat and check the box on these things and don't actually look at the different components, something like that could be out on the job site and could obviously cause a pretty serious accident. Commercial vehicle trailers and miscellaneous trailers have to be inspected before each use. I mentioned that earlier. A lot of times these trailers and things don't get used every day. It could have been, a week or 2 weeks or several weeks since it's been used. It is critical that you do a visual inspection before each use of all of these type of things. Miscellaneous powered vehicles and things like that should also be inspected. I think it's important to actually inspect every vehicle, whether it's a commercial vehicle or not, before each use. It's just taking pride in your work and pride in your craft. So I think it's a good idea to do all that. Cables and winch lines need to be inspected before each use, whether it's on a digger truck, whether it's a material handler, whatever it is. If you're going to use that winch line or that cable, it needs to be inspected before you use it. So let off enough cable to do a good inspection of it before you go to pick up a transformer or anything else, or a pole or whatever it might be. It is critical to document any type of damage to any of the equipment, whether it be something like this. It needs to be tagged out of use. The reason we can't use things like this, even though it may look like it'll hold for what we're going to use it for that particular day, you have no way of knowing what the actual strength of it is. And if you see something like this one right here, you need to tag it out of service and not use it till it gets fixed. Something like this over here, that's not acceptable, guys. If you have something to where you got to make a makeshift knot or something to hold other than the manufacturer's original part, you need to tag it out of service until it does get taken care of. We don't know what the strength of this knot right here is. So we can make a guess that yes, it'll pick up that transformer or whatever it is you're picking up, but it's simply a guess, and it's not worth your life or the life of one of your crew members that could be underneath that thing when it lets go. So please don't do things like that. It's not okay to say, well, we'll just tie this knot in it and we'll get it fixed tomorrow. It's not okay to do that. If you have something like that, get it fixed, get it taken care of, and please don't use it until it does get taken care of. Power tools. Power tools can cause major problems. If y'all remember back here a few years ago, there was an incident with a battery operated tool that caught on fire and caught a bucket on fire. Things like that can happen. So it doesn't matter what type of tool it is, whether it's a hydraulic type tool, whether it's a battery operated tool, whatever, you are required to inspect them before each use, and you are required to make sure that you maintain them properly. A lot of times when we get tools, they may be very similar to a tool that it's replaced. It may be a new tool that we've never had before. The only way we know what the manufacturer recommends for adjustments and settings on them is to read the manual. We need to make sure with our tools we read the manuals and we know what those recommendations are from the manufacturer for the adjustments and settings on them, and we need to keep those adjustments and settings correct. It's very important that we know what's expected of the tools that we use, and in most cases we need to read the manual and understand what the manufacturer says. Need to regularly inspect hoses, hydraulic hoses. Things like this happen through normal wear and tear. It's not abuse of the crews using the tools incorrectly or anything. It's just normal wear and tear from them. If you see signs that hydraulic hoses are dry rotted or anything like that, any type of damage to any hoses, even if it's just normal wear and tear, needs to be documented and needs to be taken care of immediately. Some of these hydraulic hoses operate under extreme pressure, and you get just a small pinhole in one of those and it can cut right through you. So make sure that you do maintain your hoses on a regular basis. If they need replaced, get them replaced. Hard hats. A lot of places have a regularly scheduled replacement for their hard hats. I know the co-op that I worked at, we had a replacement of our hard hats every 3 years. It was just what we did to make sure everybody's hard hat stayed in good condition and wasn't going to fail under impact or anything like that. If you have a regularly scheduled replacement on your hard hats, make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. If somebody's gone the day that you replace them, make sure when they get back that they do get their hard hat replaced. That's not to say that you can't replace it in between times. If you inspect that hard hat and it's taken a couple blows or something's happened to it and it's got a crack in it or a deformity in it, get it replaced that day. Don't let things like that slip through the cracks. We can put hard hats on and think nothing's going to happen, and nothing's going to fall on our head, or we're going to be okay, or we'll just be careful that day. And that's the wrong attitude to have. So if you've got a regularly scheduled program to change things like that out, follow through with it. If you've got a damaged hard hat just from normal wear and tear or from something that happened to it, get it replaced immediately. Rubber glove protectors. You are responsible to keep those in good condition. If they need replaced, get them replaced. That protects the rubber glove that protects you each and every day. It's important to make sure that they don't get in situations like this where holes have worn into them and have possibly got into the rubber glove itself. Keep those rubber protectors in good condition. Keep them changed out when you think they're necessary, and make sure that they're going to protect the glove that's protecting you. Personal protective equipment. Replace worn, damaged, or deteriorated harnesses, lanyards, and fall arrest systems, whether it's lanyards and harnesses for your bucket, whether it's climbing gear, whatever it is. A lot of places, again, have scheduled replacement programs in place. If you do not have one and you think your harness is worn or damaged to the point where it needs replaced, take it to your supervisor, let them look at it, and let them determine whether you need a new one and need to have it replaced. I don't know a utility around that won't replace one that needs replaced. Don't be afraid to take it to supervisor and have them look at it. And if you do have a regularly scheduled replacement program for harnesses and lanyards and things like that, make sure that, again, everybody gets it, whether they're there that day or whether they come back in the next day. Your personal protective grounds. You are required to inspect them before each use. As a user, you are required to inspect those before each use, okay? So the thing with personal grounds, we need to go a little bit further than just inspecting them. When you pull a set of grounds out that you're going to ground a line on to protect you while you're working on that line, you need to do more than just look at it and inspect it and say, yeah, it looks clean, it looks like it's in good condition. Guys, I highly encourage you each time before you put a set of grounds on, take the time to brush the jaws, clean those jaws up. We pride ourselves when we're making ground connections out there on poles or making any type of connections to the main line with jumpers. We pride ourselves on cleaning both the conductor and the jumper that we're going to connect. We do that for reliability. We do that so that everything works like it's supposed to and doesn't fail down the road. Well, if we're doing that for those connections, we definitely need to do it for the personal grounds that we're using to protect us while we're working on the line should something come hot. So I think you need to go a little bit further on this one than just inspecting it. I think you actually need to inspect it before each use. I think you need to clean it before each use and make sure everything's working correctly on it. Rubber goods, as far as your gloves and sleeves, you guys know you're required to inspect them before each use. I highly encourage you to take that rubber protector off, look at the glove visually, give it a quick air test, turn it inside out, give it a visual test inside out before you put it on each and every time that you're going to use it. It's in the rules. You're required to do it. Those gloves protect us. That's what we count on each and every day to come home safe to our families. I encourage you to be diligent with that one. Make sure you give them a good inspection, not just visually, but give them that air test and take the time to do it before each use. It's vital, guys. It's vital. We're counting on those things to work for us and to keep us safe. Please do a good job of inspecting your rubber gloves and sleeves. Live line tools. Talk a little bit about live line tools here. You are required to inspect all live line tools visually before each use. That means your shotgun sticks, your extendo sticks, whatever type of hotline tools that you're going to be using. Here's the thing. How do we go about keeping those clean? Well, I think it's really important on rainy days when you're standing around in the warehouse looking for something to do, to take the time, pull out those live line tools, pull out the cover up that you use, and take the time during those days to clean them. Keep them clean as often as you can. We're counting on that stuff to work for us. We're counting on it to keep us protected while we're working on hot phases, and it is very, very important to keep them clean, keep them inspected before each use, and keep them changed out should something need to be tested. All of our cover-up and things like that, as well as our live line tools, are inspected annually by usually an outside source. That is up to your company to get that done. But make sure that you look at the tag on it, make sure that it is within that inspection time, and make sure that it doesn't fail any visual or mechanical inspection. Run that shotgun stick a couple times before you plan on lifting that hot phase or lifting that hot jumper. Make sure you inspect it good, make sure everything's working properly before you get a hold of that hot jumper. It's important to do that. Hand tools. Hand tools are something that sometimes we take for granted and we think can't hurt us. You are required to inspect all of your hand tools before each use, make sure that they're working correctly, make sure that the handles and the grips are in good condition, make sure that if you're counting on those things to work properly for what you're going to use them for, that it's working. Take the time to inspect them before each use, just like you do everything else that you use. Don't take your hand tools, your simple tools that you carry every day, for granted. Okay, make sure they're working good, make sure that they're in good condition, and make sure that they haven't had anything happen to them since the last time that you used them. This is out of the APPA safety manual. Ownership, whether it's the employees that own the tools or the company that owns the tools, it's up to the company to ensure that all tools are in safe and working condition and in good operational order. So what that tells you is the company has the right to take away any tools that they don't feel is in good working condition or that need to have maintenance or be replaced. It's up to your company to do that, regardless if it's your tools that you purchased yourself or whether it's tools that the company purchased for you. Okay? Reliability is up to the user. The user has to inspect all tools before each use and report anything that's defective. And again, I'm going to stress on reporting as documentation. If you've got anything that's defective, document it. Document it, turn it into your supervisor, and it's more likely to get taken care of quickly, and it's more likely to get taken care of, period. Because a lot of times I hear, well, if I turn something into somebody, nothing happens. Well, a lot of things can slip through the cracks because of how busy things are for supervisors and managers. If you make a document of it and document the hazard or the defective tool, it will get replaced. APPA Safety Manual on hand tools. Tools shall not be used for any purpose other than which they've been approved for. Guys, this happens all the time. We use a crescent wrench for a hammer. We use a screwdriver as a pry bar. We use our Kleins for driving in staples or whatever. The APPA manual that y'all signed and says you read and understand states that tools shall be used only for the purpose for which they have been approved. So don't improvise, don't use tools for things that they haven't been approved for. This is also out of that same section of the APPA. This one might surprise some people if you didn't know that this was in there. Tools shall not be thrown from place to place or from person to person. Tools that must be raised or lowered from one elevation to another shall be placed in tool buckets or firmly attached to hand lines. Guys, it's not okay to take a pair of Kleins or a pair of cutters or a wrench and throw up to a guy in the bucket. It's not okay. I know that we're taught proper ways of throwing things up to a guy, but you know what? When it comes right down to it, you're not allowed to throw it from place to place. Use hand lines. Hand lines is one of those things that we've gotten away from taking with us and using properly anyway, and I think we need to get back to the basics of that. We need to carry hand lines with us if we're working in an elevated situation so that tools and equipment can be raised and lowered to us properly. Again, do not use hand tools if they're damaged or faulty. Get them repaired or replaced before you use them. If it's your responsibility to buy that tool, it's up to you. It's part of your trade. Go get it, go buy it, go replace it, take care of it. If it's up to the company, document it, turn it into the supervisor and let them replace it. Never use hand tools for other than its intended use. We talked about that one before. Please be diligent with that. Take pride in your craft and take pride in how you work, and make sure you set a good example for everybody. Store all hand tools properly and do not store them where they can damage other PPE. Big pet peeve of probably about every supervisor in the state is people carrying things like Kleins, crescent wrenches, screwdrivers in their rubber glove bag. Guys, that's not acceptable. Don't do that. Don't store them in the trucks where they're up against something that it could damage. If it's got a sharp blade on it or something like that, it's required to be covered. So make sure that you're diligent with storage of your tools. Take pride in your PPE and make sure that you don't do things that could damage it, over time. Right out of the APPA again, tools with sharp edges shall be stored and handled so that they will not cause injury or damage. They shall not be carried in pockets. If you have tools that are sharp, that could cut through your pockets or anything like that, you're not allowed to carry them in your pockets. It's right in the manual, guys. Again, know and understand the safety manual that you signed, and make sure that you're diligent with, with carrying your tools and storing your tools properly. Letter R in that same section. The insulation on hand tools shall not be depended upon to protect users from electrical shock. What does that mean? That means if you have a pair of cutters, insulated cutters, that you're going to cut a hot jumper with or something like that, what does that mean? That means that you've got to wear your rubber gloves while doing it. You should have them on at that time anyway, but you cannot, the word right here, you shall not depend upon the insulation of that tool to protect you. Be diligent, guys. Take a little bit of pride in what you do. Wear those rubber gloves all the time that you're in a situation like that, and don't depend on a tool that gets, inspected mechanically once a year to protect you. Your winch lines, whether it's on a material handler, whether it's on a digger derrick, whether it's a front end winch, no matter what kind of winch line it is, it's a good idea, and we recommend that monthly you pull the entire length of that winch line out and inspect the entire length of it. If you see any type of fraying or damage at all to that winch line, it needs to be replaced. It needs to be fixed, guys. It's not okay, even if that's frayed back there 30 or 40 feet, it's not okay to use that winch line if it's been damaged anywhere on that entire spool. I think it's a good idea to at least monthly pull the entire length of that cable out and inspect the entire length of it. And you are required to inspect it before each use, okay? Things like ladders and other tools, if they have a crack or something in it that could make it fail, don't take the attitude that, well, it'll hold me this time, I'll get it fixed tomorrow. Don't get on a ladder or use a tool that has any type of defect in it at all and use it and think that you're going to get by that time. You may and you may not, and you don't know when your number is going to be called. So if you've got a defective tool, a defective ladder, anything like that, don't think that it'll be okay to use this one time and then replace it tomorrow. Red tag it out of service, have them bring you another one, have another crew bring you a ladder, whatever it takes to do it correctly and do it safely. Again, out of the APPA, on hand tools, defective tools shall be tagged to prevent their use, or they shall be removed from the job site. It's what I just talked about with the ladder, the example I gave you with the ladder. If you've got something that has got a defect on it that you have found, tag it out of service, so that the next guy doesn't overlook that defect that you found. Tag it out of service, don't use it. I think it's a good idea to get it off the truck as soon as possible when you get in at the end of the day. Set it in an area that it won't be used and that everybody can see the tag that you tagged it out of service. Report it to your supervisor and let them handle it from there. But don't think that it's okay to use a tool just once, and don't forget to tag it out of service. It is your responsibility to do that. If you find a defect in something, it's your responsibility. Tag it out of service. Let the supervisor handle it from there. They'll either replace it, repair it, or whatever they deem necessary. So the 5 main points that we talked about, there's several things that are your responsibility. There's several things that you need to turn into supervisors and let them be responsible for it. But the first point that we talked about, an effective inspection and maintenance program can greatly reduce the risk of accidents and injuries. We talked about that, guys. You are required to inspect your tools and your equipment before each use. Some of them are required daily, some of them are required before each use, and documentation is critical on all of them. Second point, an effective maintenance program begins with thorough and frequent inspections of the equipment and the tools. That means before each use or before each day, whatever is required. With as far as equipment, your trucks and things like that, DOT and OSHA require you to inspect those daily. Some people do it pre-trip, some people do it post-trip. Whatever your company policy is, make sure that you follow it and make sure that you do it either before or after the use of that truck. And make sure you don't pencil whip it, guys. Don't sit in that seat and pencil whip an inspection form. Actually look at each component before you make that check mark in the box. The third one, an effective maintenance program requires a regular and timely schedule along with good record keeping, harnesses, hard hats, things like that, your rubber gloves, your rubber sleeves, your cover up, all of that stuff has regularly scheduled testing with it. Make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. Get your gloves and your sleeves tested accordingly for what your company policy is. Your cover-up and things like that typically are inspected and tested yearly, but you still have to inspect them before each use. That's your responsibility. Make sure it's going to work for you at that particular time. The next one, employees must be trained in the requirements of maintenance programs, and supervisors must follow up and lead by example. I think that all goes back to documentation. If you document an issue or a defect with a tool, or you document a defect with a piece of equipment, it's not going to fall through the cracks. It's going to be sitting on somebody's desk that this piece of equipment or this tool has a defect on it. And if it's down in writing and you've documented it, it's probably going to happen and not slip through the cracks where it gets put aside. If that supervisor has something sitting on his desk, he's not going to forget about it. So it's critical, I think, to document all of your inspections, no matter what it is. And if you see a defect, I think you need to tag it out of service. You need to document it, and you need to take care of it with your supervisor. The last one on there, inspection and reporting alone are not enough. Follow-up on problems, defects, and damages are critical to get tools replaced or repaired immediately. I don't think that there's any in between for that. I think you've got to inspect it as according to your company policy and what's required of you as the user. And then I think it gets handed into management and let them take care of it after that, whether it's your supervisor or whoever is the person that you take that stuff to. But document it, make sure it gets taken care of immediately. Don't be that guy that thinks, well, I'll get by with it just one more time and I'll turn it in tomorrow. If it's got a defect in it, get it taken care of immediately, guys. It's just what we have to do. Any questions or comments, take the time at the end of this program to discuss it with your supervisors, discuss it with your safety personnel, whoever you need to. If you don't understand what your policy is at your utility, ask. Find out. Take the time at the end of this program to discuss it. Take the time to discuss any concerns that you have on tools or equipment that maybe you think hasn't been taken care of, and see where your supervisor's at with it. I think it's vital that we take care of these problems accordingly, and that we do our due diligence when it comes to taking care of the equipment and the tools that we use. I hope you all have got something out of this program. I hope that it suffices for now. I wish that we could still come around and see all of you like we used to, and that's going to happen again soon. Everybody just kind of bear with us, and this program's just like any other safety program. Y'all are going to get out of it what you want to get out of it. So please take it serious. Please talk about the things that we discussed today, and please be safe. Thanks a lot.